Good morning, everyone.
Can you get this?
Yeah, thank you. All right, so thanks for the generous introduction. I think there is no doubt that everyone hears about cybersecurity or information security these days pretty much on a daily basis, whether it's through Wall Street Journal or it's on news because of so many events that have happened. I think at the same time, we also struggle to figure out how to prioritize what's most important, what we should do specifically within our organizations. And what we're going to share today is at least a piece in that puzzle to try to help you solve on how to prioritize. I think everyone's heard of the famous quote from Peter Drucker, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? At the same time, there is one piece that's missing in that quote, at least according to me, which is you can have a strategy to improve the culture. And security is about culture. It's not just about implementing some shiny toys or few technologies. It's a cultural shift that we need to make in organizations. At the same time, going back to my earlier point, how do you prioritize it? About a little over 2 years ago, when I was actually interviewing for the job that I do today as the US CISO for BMO Financial Group, or call it CISO for BMO Harris Bank, which is the US part of it. I was driving from St. Louis to Chicago to meet with our CEO. And I just stopped by to grab some lunch. And I was going through this thought process on, I've been doing strategy for a while, but how do I explain that to a CEO in the briefest possible way? And literally, on the back of a napkin at a McDonald's, I wrote something down that became what I'm going to share with you, a framework that we have been able to successfully use at our organization. I've shared with quite a few CISOs in Chicago and New York, and they've started implementing it, and it's been quite effective. So it's my pleasure that I'm able to share the same here with you as well. Understanding the fact that this is something that your boards will understand, your chief executives will understand, and it will resonate with them. So with that said, I'm going to let William take away and get into setting up the stage for what's going to lead to how do we do some of the prioritization.
Good morning, everyone. So this session is about a framework called BICT framework, and Aman just introduced how he came around with that framework or that aha moment. Now, in my life, I've been with information or cybersecurity for more than 25 years. And this is the first time I've come across, at least I've come across a framework that brings objectivity into cybersecurity conversation. A number of times when you are at an executive level, when you're deciding about, what should be our cybersecurity strategy this year, you tend to bounce off questions like, should we be focusing on perimeter security? Or do we need to invest some money in data and application security as well? What about cloud? What about mobile? How are we doing there? How do we prevent ourselves from ransomware? So BICT is one of those frameworks that is going to help you in bringing objectivity and focus while you are having that conversation. Okay, it's over here. So the question is, where do you get started? You get started with understanding where you are right now, which is current state assessment. Now, if you release an RFI to 10 different consulting firms, big and small, high-end to low-end, for current state assessment, chances are you're going to get a reply from 11. Everyone wants to do it. Easy money. There are some reputed frameworks out there like NIST, ISO. And I know there is a bit of criticism around them, and people are going to say that they are not up to date. But it only takes some common sense in tweaking some of these frameworks and making them up to date. For example, I'm a bit high these days about the next generation of technologies, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, machine learning. And so all I need to do is tweak those frameworks to suit my requirements, which is what the consulting or advisory firms have done. As a result of that, you have a boatload of those frameworks to do the current state assessment. You also get a fair bit of intel from your audit department based on your audit finding or audit performance, and a lot of useful intel from your IS ops team. Now, those of you who do not have a formal IS ops team, you could have that conversation with your IT ops team to understand A, what are the adversaries that your organization is dealing with, and B, where exactly is your organization taking the hits? So that would be your weak link, and that is something for you to focus on. You've done your current state assessment. The next question is, where do you want to be? 1 year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and that's your future state. And that process gets started by understanding your business. You might have heard this term countless times in security conferences. Align security to business. What does that mean? Align your security to business. So if I could really dumb down that idea and make it very simple, the way I see it is that some of these technologies are definitely going to support the forward-leaning business initiatives of my organizations. And these technologies are cloud, mobile, analytics, Internet of Things, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and even robotics. So the question I ask myself when I'm talking about supporting the business is, can my security program, is it capable of supporting what it is doing today, which is supporting the traditional IT, and is it also capable of supporting the next gen of technologies and business solutions that we are trying to launch? And like anything else in life, when you are trying to talk about future, you got to be reasonably ambitious, but at the same time be realistic and understand that there's going to be a limitation when it comes to staff, budget, and time. And time is really important because there's a chance that you might have a reasonable budget to work around with. There's a chance that you might have an extremely motivated security team. But there's only so much change that your organization can absorb in a given amount of time. All right, so we have current state, we have our future state. I wish life was that straightforward. You have a plan, you stick to that plan, and boom, everything will go as per the plan. It rarely does it? Now, a lot of people said that they are never going to quote this on a platform like this. But the last time this quote was made by Mark Cuban on Shark Tank. This quote is from Mike Tyson, and he said that everyone has got a plan until you get punched on your face. So what could change when it comes to your future plan? Well, for one, your business model could change. There's a chance that your organization might slow down some of the existing business delivery model or completely abandon some of them and embark on entirely new business models. Now, I didn't have a conversation with Walmart folks on this one, but it's a no-brainer that Walmart's focus is on online model. Their focus is on that 24/7 self-serve delivery model. That doesn't mean that they're getting rid of their stores. In fact, their stores now are part of their online model. You order online, get it delivered on the store. We all know the changes in the media sector. Print is vanishing. Retail does not need any introduction. Even in the financial sector, there is a change. You don't see that many insurance and mortgage brokers in the retail operations the way you used to see 10 or 20 years ago. What else can change? When the economy is running on high note, it seems like the party is never going to stop. 2000, 2008, pretty much the same symptoms. So what if there is an economic disruption in next 2 years, and you have to slash your security budget by 25 to 50%? Industry disruption. So an executive was asked that, what is it that you're most afraid of? And his answer was, something that I've not seen yet. I'm afraid of that next wave of digital disruption that I don't know about. It's the next wave of Ubers and Airbnb that I really am afraid of. The existing competition on that magic quadrant, I know about it. I've got a plan to deal with that competition. But it's the next wave of disruption that I'm scared of. So that could happen. And then I hate to play that Armageddon card saying that everything will fall apart, but this is realistic. There could be a global disruption. For example, what if internet is not available for 1 week? Or what if that number one cloud service provider that is out there goes through disruption where 50% of the data stored there gets corrupted? So you need to have a strong plan A, but at the same time, at a high level, at least be ready with a plan B. What if this doesn't go that way? Then what should I be doing? And all the exercise that you have done until now, that translates into a high-level security vision and a detailed level security requirements. I think the difference between the future state and current state gives you the gap analysis. I've already talked about business strategy and how you can align yourself to the business. I've talked a bit about trends. The one area of trend that I would like to again mention is the global trends. So a few years back, we had anti-money laundering. That had a huge impact on our technology planning as well as on our security planning. Now you are hearing about GDPR. Pretty much every week there is a seminar that is being organized. It's all in the hype right now. So what's the impact of GDPR? And what does it mean for your organization, for your organization's business? And in that way, how does it translate to your security strategy? Bitcoin is on a rebound. It has come back like a tsunami right now. So if it continues to gain its momentum, then what does that mean? What are the implications on your organization and hence on your security? And finally, the most important of all is the threat outlook. Whether it is espionage, data theft, ransomware, disruption, what is it that's motivating these attackers to attack your industry vertical? And to be more specific, what is it that is going to motivate them to attack your organization? That is the part we need to understand. So you had your security vision at a high level. You had your security requirements. All these get translated into security solutions. And I can guarantee that by the time your teams will come out with these security solutions, you will have more solutions than you can practically digest in the next 2 to 3 years. So the question is, how do we prioritize them? Which one do we implement in year 1? Which one can wait for year 2 or 3? And that's where the BICT model kicks in. I'll let Aman continue from here.
Thanks, William. Right. So did William scare anyone so far? We get paid for being paranoid. You all know that, right? That's what information security folks are. But with that said, I think the point that William's making is you have to have a plan, you have to have a strategy to deal with the knowns and also to some extent to unknowns. And and I know all of you being executives, you already know the definition of a strategy, getting from a point A to a point B and having a path to get there. That's in a very simple terms what a strategy really means. Interestingly, at one of my earlier organizations where I worked, we created a strategy which was nothing but a list of initiatives that we were going to do. So we said, we'll clean up the firewalls, we'll make sure IDS, IPS stay up to date and the signatures are kept up to date, we'll implement log monitoring, and we went up the layers from very basic to more advanced. So we kind of created a pyramid. One time, one of the guys on my team, he brought that pyramid to a presentation, and what he did was right on top of the pyramid, just imagine, you create a pyramid, you have layers and bricks that show all of these different capabilities. On the top of it, he put prayer. Right? At the end of the day, they say that's what we end up doing. Hope we implement all of this, but at the end of the day, we just pray that nothing goes wrong. But as we know, hope is not a strategy. It was funny. We all laughed about it. I did not share that with our CEO, to be completely honest. Obviously, that wouldn't have left me there too long. But we also know that a lot of us have visions for future. Our executives, the CEOs do. But as they say, if you have a vision but no strategy, then it's illusion, right? Because you don't actually have a plan to get there, and until then it doesn't work. And one of the key aspects to have that strategy is being able to prioritize. How do you sequence things? How do you know what's more important? How do you know what will get you the most bang for your buck? And that's what the BICT model is supposed to help with. The one disclaimer I'll put is I'm not making any assumptions on cost of anything in this model to start with. I know cost plays a part in our decision making, but we are purely basing this model and saying, you got X amount of dollars, and you have to just prioritize what's in front of you, the challenges that you need to deal with. How would you go about prioritizing that? So let's start with the business value. This is one of the 4 pillars. Traditionally, information security teams, including myself in the past, to be completely candid, have used either compliance as a reason to do security, or some have used scare tactics, like something will go bad if we don't do this. Okay, it might be fair, it might be true, but how about we create a more balanced view for our businesses to understand what we're intending to do? And this business value pillar is trying to help with one of those aspects. And I'll give you one example real quick. At one of my previous organizations, we looked at a very unique problem. We had a huge customer support team, which means taking phone calls. And what we realized was the turnover was very high. Now, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with security. What we found out when we dig deeper is that people who get into those jobs don't even get access to the systems that they need to do their jobs for anywhere between 2 to 3 weeks to be able to respond to customer calls. Their training ends in 3 days, and then they sit idle and wait till they get access to be productive. Well, that's clearly some productivity loss. On top of it, if you're familiar with the customer service industry, there's a very high turnover rate. And the turnover rate over a period of a year was about 75%. We talked to HR about it, and one of the things they said is, depending on the experience of any employee in the first few days determines the rate of retention. Right? That's a proven study that has been done. So the better people have experience when they start, the more likely they are to stay with an organization for a long time. It's very important. Now, in this particular case, we were losing these folks pretty fast. So from an information security standpoint, what we did was we put together a proposal. We said, if you give us $2 million, now again, this is a different size of organization, and it could vary depending on your size of organization. You can probably solve this problem with 500,000 or takes 10 million. But anyway, we said if we spend $2 million, we can do a productivity gain per year of $6 million. $2 million initial spend, obviously some spend year over year, which will be just licensing and support and things like that, probably in the range of $250,000. But we can do a very significant productivity gain and also improve the retention rate. Well, we got the money, we implemented it, and after the first year itself, we saw a productivity gain of $11 million in the organization. But that was huge from a business value standpoint. And it was by implementing an identity access management system. Now, I did not get the other $9 million in bonus, but what I did get is, next time when I went back to the executives and said, I need more money because I want to expand this IAM program to implement user access certification, automating other roles, doing role mining, I wasn't asked a single question. I got another chunk of money, go do what you want to do next, because the savings that we brought to the organization. Now, way too many people don't think about that aspect when they're in information security, that there are ways to help bring business value. So that's what this really talks about. And we're going to visit a couple of more examples or case studies that we worked on practically to bring that kind of business value. What we really want you to think about when you're thinking about almost any initiative is use the business lens to say what kind of business value can we drive by implementing a particular solution that we really need. The second thing I want to cover real quick is industry benchmarking on industry standards. I would expect most of you go in front of your boards, right? And I will not be surprised that most of the times when you have a discussion, they ask, so what's XYZ doing? Or what is the benchmark in our industry for a particular capability? And same for security. All the way from how much we spend, what does the industry spend on average, all the way to capabilities perspective. So William mentioned earlier NIST and ISO as example, and there are a lot of frameworks. You can use COBIT, you can use COSO, and so on. You can pick up any of these frameworks. But what's important when you go in front of the board of directors and you say, we are at a maturity level 3, well, that's not good enough. What if the rest of the industry is a maturity level 4 for that capability? Then we are not there yet. And in a lot of cases, this is one of those situations where sometimes you just need to be better than that last guy, right? We've all heard about that. If you're running from a bear, you better be running faster than the slowest person, and you'll survive. But in this case, it's also interesting that most of the attackers are going much wider. They are not just looking for one particular loophole, one particular organization. It is possible. So for example, when the Apache Struts vulnerability came out, the researchers had already put information on the internet, having scanned the entire internet in less than 3 hours, in saying where all this vulnerability exists. And when I'm saying 3 hours, I'm exaggerating. It actually got done faster. And the reason for 3 hours is it took some vetting for them to do and revalidate before they posted that information. So it is that fast for someone to figure out that somewhere in internet facing, there's a vulnerability that can be exploited. Now, if you think about that, when security people keep saying, patch your systems, it is that critical for us to be able to do that and be better than others, because the attackers will quickly go after where they find the first opportunity. Now, patching aside, it's also true for any other capability that's implemented in an organization. Measure up with some very important or basic benchmarking tools that are available. Implements the standards like ISO, NIST, COSO, COBIT, whatever works for your organization, bearing in mind that is the bare minimum that you have to do. With some of the examples that William was using earlier, cloud, mobile, IoTs, it's not enough to just implement those standards. They get you to a particular baseline. Some of these standards have not been updated in 2 or 3 years, and just imagine how much things have changed in 2 or 3 years. So it's a good watermark, it's a decent mark to get at, but it's not enough. And that's where The next two slides will take you and a couple of our examples to talk about what else you need to do.
The next area is compliance management. Now, I don't know when this happened, how this happened, but in one of these conferences, someone was standing here a few years ago, and this person said, compliance is equal to checklist. Checklist is a waste of time, and so for that reason, compliance does not equate to security. Being compliant doesn't mean that you are secure. That's true for anything else in life. So it's not just about security, it's about any technology initiative, any business initiative. An initiative is not banking on one component. As a security professional, I could encrypt every bit of data that is out there in my data center, in mobile, in cloud, and then I could ask the question, is my information secure? All it needs for a hacker is to compromise one legitimate credential, and they can access that encrypted information. I could convince my boss and tell him, look, we are a bank, we are a financial institution, let's stay away from danger. I don't want mobile, I don't want cloud. Let everything reside in our data center. The question is my information secure in my data center? Can I thwart the attacks that might be attacking my data center? The answer is no. I could hire a fleet of CISSP professionals. Just because I'm hiring certified professionals, does that guarantee that I won't be able to, my information will not be breached? So the point is that we hear the term defense in depth. And compliance is just one component of that defense in depth. Now, if you are circumventing compliance and blindly following that checklist approach just to get compliant and pass the audit, then yes, it's a waste of time. But otherwise, I think it's a reasonable tool that's out there for you. The reality check is that for a lot of organizations, compliance is about staying in business. But to me, the bigger advantage of compliance comes from this thing. A number of organizations, they don't have a formal cybersecurity program. And for those, compliance is an amazing tool. It's an accelerator to reach from point zero or wherever that point is to a certain half-decent point. Compliance can cover that journey at a pretty fast rate. It can convince everyone in the organization to fund your initiatives to reach that decent state. Compliance oversight is about coming out with policies and controls and making sure that it is communicated well to IT and rest of the organization. It is uniformly implemented. So when I'm evaluating a potential cybersecurity solution against compliance, the questions I'm asking is this solution going to uniquely address any of my compliance requirements? And more importantly, going back to Aman's business value perspective, is this solution or this new control going to get rid of some of the redundant controls or ineffective controls that I have in my organization? And in that process, can I make the life better for some of my people and for some of my customers? And the last quadrant in the BICT is threat management. So forever, we all grew up here listening to it and understanding that in security, we manage threat, we manage the threat vectors. And what we are trying to do is we provide confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You all must have heard that thousands of times, so I'm not going to repeat that. Modern security has gone way beyond that. You have three new attributes that are equally important. The fourth one is safety. Thanks to the revolution of Internet of Things, today, if you are dealing thousands of devices in your organization, in next few years, you will be managing hundreds of thousands of devices. You must have heard about the horror stories that the car got hijacked because its computer got hijacked, the smart refrigerator or air conditioning unit got hijacked. Healthcare system is going to be big time embedded with Internet of Things. What about the patient safety and concerns? And for that reason, safety is going to be an important part of your cybersecurity strategy moving forward. The next one is resiliency. So we heard about WannaCry, we heard about ransomware, we heard about strategies as to how we can deal with ransomware. To me, what I learned from that is that I'll do my best, but after doing my best, I cannot guarantee anyone that my organization will never be impacted by ransomware. Maybe an unpatched device that is in one corner of the basement that hasn't been used for a while, it might get impacted by ransomware. But the lesson I've learned from that is, what can I do to have those processes in place so that we can rebound back from that attack, so that my IT can rebound back and get that system or information online again, back online again. And so resiliency is going to be an important part of your strategy. And finally, privacy. So in the name of cybersecurity, we are going to do everything we can to protect the information, but we want to protect this information while respecting the privacy laws. And to give you one example, my team is managing CASB, Cloud Access Security Broker. So we are monitoring every traffic that is originating from the bank to anywhere in the cloud, and vice versa. But we are doing this monitoring by respecting the privacy laws. We are not pinpointing on a certain employee or a certain customer and trying to understand what that employee or customer is doing. We are looking at the anomalies, we are looking at the red flags, and we are trying to deal with that. So when you're talking about threat management, if you try to look at all the threats that have impacted the industry in the last 30 years, that's a lot of inventory. And I really don't want you to waste time into that. Threat management is about looking at what your business model is today and where you are heading tomorrow. It's about understanding what are the adversaries that your organization is handling today, what is relevant today. And one way to do that is you look into your business proposals, and then you try to understand what is the solution architecture or technology architecture that is supporting that business model. What are the underlying pieces of technology? And most importantly, how is the data flowing from my data center to the third party's data center, from there to Amazon and back and forth? Understand those components in the architecture, and then try to understand that what are the weak links in this architecture. Where could that information or data might be compromised? Where can we come under attack? And that's threat management. So when you are analyzing a new security solution, you analyze that solution for not its ability to deal with every possible threat that exists there, but its ability to uniquely address some of the weaker links in what you are trying to do. And that's how you can understand the value that new solution is going to provide in terms of threat management. I'm going to take an example of explaining how my team used BICT model to deal with security in DevOps. So the traditional waterfall methodology is very strong on preventive controls, which means that you have plenty of time for testing cycles. But the bottom line is that whole process is very slow, and it's not the right fit for DevOps. So what did we do in DevOps? We didn't abandon all those preventive controls, but we balanced those preventive controls with enough detective and corrective controls. We integrated security into SDLC by integrating static application security testing, real-time code sanity testing or checking. We integrated open source software testing right into SDLC right from the get-go. What else we did? We also tweaked our processes. So we said we are enabling the developers and the testing teams with these latest and greatest technologies, If our processes cannot keep pace with those technologies, then it's no good. So we tweaked our remediation processes and triaging processes to make sure that the support system around those technologies is equally fast. Then we are heading towards no patch strategy. Now, I know you must be thinking, just now your boss said about patching. So thanks to the revolution of VMware and Dockers, the era where you will have to apply patches, bring down the system, reconfigure them, outages and all that, that era is going to be over by the end of next decade. Because VMs are created from templates, images, your workloads are created from those templates. If you keep those images or templates up to date with patches, all you need to do is you regenerate your workload with those templates when it's time to patch without having outages. And finally, we introduced a lot of automation and integration. And we did that by introducing a sophisticated platform that could be shared by the business teams, the developers, ISOs, application security team, and governance team. So everybody had one view of what was happening in the application and data security area. And the advantage of this platform was it was able to do log, change, and exceptions management process. So with that brief, let's see how it's impacting the BICT. Return of investment. My team did an extensive exercise on return of investment. I'm not going to go through all the detail, but at a very, let's say, 10,000 feet altitude, the explanation is if I can save 2 hours of work for my BAs and for my developers per application per week, then throughout the year, I was able to demonstrate that we were able to save 40% of the budget. When you have a security program that is so embedded into your development lifecycle that you are able to partner with your technology folks and with your business folks, and you are able to run at the same pace that they want to run, then that's when you are doing the business enablement. Industry benchmark. So security got embedded early. There was a platform we have started using that provides increased oversight, greater visibility, information sharing. As a result of that, we started catching issues early on. And what that meant was these issues and vulnerabilities, they didn't accumulate. They didn't become that avalanche by the time it was time for release. So by the time an application goes for release, you have very few surprises and pretty much next to nothing rework that needs to be done. All this really spiked up our maturity or the capability maturity in the application and data security domain. From the compliance perspective, so when DevOps came, again, someone said that, DevOps is okay for some startups, but this is not the thing for financial institutions. This is not the right thing for organizations that are highly regulated. And their rationale was you just don't get enough time for testing. And someone even in the name of compliance said that this is a complete misfit with compliance because there is not enough segregation of duties between development and operations. Until someone went to those compliance guys and said, where in the book of compliance is it written that there should be segregation of duties between development and operations? What compliance is talking about is management oversight. It's talking about, are you having a system where you can keep a tab on what's happening in the Scrum? How is that being managed? Are you doing all your due diligences when something is migrating from dev to QA and from QA to prod? That's compliance. So once again, from the compliance perspective, we were able to integrate security right from the get-go. We were able to reduce the number of vulnerabilities that we were noticing. The process and the platform was so rock solid that log management, exceptions management, change management was being performed by this platform with complete visibility to all the stakeholders who were using that platform. So from the compliance perspective, you don't have to do what you have always been doing, which is take some dumb screenshot and dump it over to a shared drive, or copy your log file and dump it over to the shared file. We were able to do compliance management in a better way and without wasting anyone's time in taking some of those screenshots. And finally, threat management. So we are testing our application at a higher frequency level. We have a support process where the remediation and triaging is done at the same pace as the applications are getting tested. As a result, we have fewer vulnerabilities. We are able to stay on top of the vulnerabilities, and hence, we are able to stay on top of the threat vectors. By the time it's about time for the release, there are very few surprises. Rarely there are instances where an application has got critical or high vulnerability. And that translates to higher threat management.
Right. I'm going to touch on one more example. Anyone heard of the term cloud? Right. That was just my excuse to take a sip of water. So I think one of the things that we all understand at this point, when we talk about emerging technologies, emerging threats, and so on, I don't think cloud now fits the category of emerging. It's here, right? I think everyone needs to just accept it and now figure out, if they haven't already, on how do we adopt it in a secure manner. There are definitely threats related to it. There's definitely chances of data loss and interruptions or disruptions and so on. But how do you prepare for it? I think that's the part we need to really focus on as security professionals, as IT professionals, to enable our businesses. I attended a conference a couple of weeks ago. It was actually internal within BMO. And one of the things that was being discussed, and I think it will resonate with anyone in technology, is, the competition for most of the organizations are now with other big technology organizations. So, for example, we are in the financial institution, we are a bank, but are we really competing with the small little disruptors coming out of the Silicon Valley or Boston or wherever? Or are we actually now competing with the fact that Amazon can raise their hand and say, I'm going to start doing banking now, right? Or Walmart that already attempted a license to do banking, and they've started money transfer service, and they're looking into doing more things like that and go mostly digital. So the typical banks will have a challenge with these big technology companies that are already out there. They're already well established and are into all of our homes, whether it's our Google Home devices or Alexa using Amazon. They're already there. Amazon is potentially looking at doing home delivery of medicines, right? That will also be hard to compete with. They have the infrastructure that's needed to be able to do that. So, with all that said, I think what we need to really figure out is, how do we help the business do this successfully in a secure manner? We already know there are advantages. There's flexibility, there's scalability. From multiple experiences, I have figured out there's not always a cost justification. Actually, there's only a few times there's cost justification to do it on the surface. In the long term, it might actually work out cheaper. So one of the examples that I like to use when someone says, you're in security, why do you support cloud? That's like losing control. I'm saying, guess what? I don't have to tell IT to keep patching servers because an Amazon or Microsoft or whoever is doing it for us, right? There are things that we are outsourcing indirectly from a security maintenance standpoint as well. We're holding them accountable for forensics, to send us logs, to do all the other things that I would really and otherwise depend on our technology teams to do. So what we're doing is shifting that load. There are a lot of compliance checklists that are available that you can use to do that. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing that we need to think about when we think of any such example, so I'm going to move away from cloud for a minute, whether it's mobile, whether it's cloud, if it's DevOps, whether it's identity access management, data loss prevention, any capability that you think of in security, you can think about it from these 4 different aspects. What is the business value being provided? Where are we from an industry benchmarking standpoint? What are the compliance implications for not doing it right? And as specifically William stated, if you're doing compliance as a checklist, it's ineffective. But if you really mean it, if you not go just by the letter, but the spirit of what the checklist is trying to tell you to do, you'll actually be much better off. And obviously the threat management aspects. There's a lot of free tools available. You can go online and do open source threat intel platform. I think MSI and other platforms will come up that will help you get a lot of feeds, consume them, and understand where we are from a threat perspective. With all that said, I'd like to conclude with these 4 salient points. Start off with having a vision from a business perspective, not just from a security perspective, not just from a technology perspective. Where does the business want to be? And we can align security with that business vision. It's doable. Not a lot of organizations do it. Think about the security solutions that help you get there. So if I want to compete with these big technology companies, well, I need to make sure that DevOps and cloud are part of that equation. So how am I helping them get there? Use this BICT framework. We can't get into that much detail at this platform, but if you would visualize the kind of 2 examples that we gave you. Let's say in the left column, you put every initiative and provide a justification from a BICT standpoint for each of them. And simply on a spreadsheet, that's all we did. And score them. You can come out with a very clear list of priorities that you would like to focus on. That is one way of achieving it. And finally, strategy, specifically from a security standpoint, is not a one-time deal, as everything else in strategy. We highly recommend that you revisit it at least every 6 months, if not more often, depending on the size of the strategy and amount of work that's in front of you. But because how quickly the threat landscape is changing, you need to stay up to date from a strategy perspective for security. And also, it will allow you to make changes from a priority standpoint based on how the business is changing their own trends. So with that, I know we only have a couple of minutes, but if there are any questions, we'd be happy to address. Excellent. Thank you, everyone.